Craig joins us now. Sorry, Craig, you're back.
Yep, thank you. Don't know what's going on. Yes,
No,
so
it's
the
all
answer
right.
to your
It's
question
the
is,
nature of audiovisual in this country,
yeah,
unfortunately. Listen, I was going to ask you a question. Your children, are they millennials or are they Gen Zs?
yeah, two millennials, one Z.
Have you noticed your millennials going more left liberal as they've got older or not?
I don't really know that that's political, actually, so I don't know the answer to that. I think they're pretty pragmatic, actually, all of them, focused on
Right.
jobs and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't think I could categorise them, to be frank.
I could definitely categorise mine. And there you go. But then they're doing politics at university, mine, so you would expect them to
Right.
have a political
Okay.
view. Listen, the announcement on Tuesday, I thought of you actually when I saw the announcement, and I wondered, you'll have some views on it, obviously, but do you see any extra work for yourself from that or not?
Oh, not from our GFA perspective, because the CapEx requirements continue. It's just the form of the vehicle potentially changes, doesn't it? So I was thinking of you, actually, one of the 12 councillors on the Otago Regional Council, and what that means for you as through this kind of consultation process. But I was sort of unpicking it all and trying to think through the gains, the efficiency gains. So the question for the councillors on the regional councils that, like yourself, is if you weren't there and you had the mayors, it's five councils, isn't it, in the Otago Regional Council district. If you had the five mayors around the table, would they do a better job coordinating and doing the things that you do now rather than 12 councillors?
No, that's exactly the point that I'm making, Craig, this morning. No is the answer to that question. In fact, they'll know even less. I don't understand, and that's what I've been having this conversation with Nick Siff this morning. I don't understand why the government just didn't proceed immediately to the unitary authority concept, which has been demonstrated to be a success in most of the countries where it is. You know what it is?
Yes, yes. So the unitaries, well, Nick Smith's one of those, but Chatham's, Gisborne, Marlborough, Nelson, and Tasman are all the unitaries where they do district and regional kind of workloads. Yeah,
In Auckland,
there's
of
some,
course.
and Auckland separately set up under different legislation. Yep, you're absolutely right. So the question for you is okay, that's one lens. And then you say, well, for the five mayors on your Otago regional council, is it one vote per mayor? Is that fair? Or do you have to have a proportional vote based on the populations in your particular council?
Well, I think
So
that's
that's
what part
one.
of the consultation's on, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And then I was sort of thinking about some secondary issues that were raised in the consultation paper, which is for important RMA decisions, which might affect the role of rural districts inside those regional councils run by the mayors. They
Yep.
want to ensure that the rural vote is heard. So they've got a different voting requirement for these new combined territorial boards to strengthen the numbers to ensure they are heard. But, in addition, the minister concerned can put a member, a commissioner on that particular board. I don't know why you would do that, but it tells you that ministers still want to intervene, which I guess we have to think about carefully, don't we? What does that actually mean?
Yeah. Listen, I think they've got the governance structure wrong. But I'm just as a personal view. Like I said, I would have made haste much quicker and got to the end result. I'm interested though I guess we'll all have a contribution to make and a final decision to be made. The thing that struck me as interesting, I wondered, is the introduction of the legislation to do with resource law reform. It's meant to be introduced into Parliament next year, but it won't be passed before the election. Is it your view that there might be a danger that it's not passed at all?
No, I think it will be passed because some of this announcement this week, subject to consultation, is sort of hangs off all the changes to the Resource Management Act and to the two new bits of legislation. So it is a bit of a package. So no, I think it's integral to the work plan of the coalition.
No, I meant as in the change, because it won't be passed before the election. That's what I'm saying. So I'm interested if there's a risk that there was a centre-left government elected, that there might be significant changes as a consequence of that.
Okay, in relation to the local government announcements on Tuesday?
No, in consultation to resource law reform in this country, and which obviously the new councils will be required to implement.
Well, of course, I mean, central government can change legislation, as you know. They can reverse things. So absolutely a risk, for sure. So no question. Would they want to do that? Like, I don't know, haven't heard their views yet as a group, of the constituents on the centre-left, or as a group what they think of the legislation, what they would do better.
Yeah, well, we do know that the Greens have come out and they've said that they've banned mining in this country. In fact, they'll retrospectively ban it. I think coal, hard rock and seabed mining were the three in particular. We've had Shane Jones on that this morning. It's
Yeah, but
going
where
forward.
does Labor stand on all these things?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't know is the answer to that question. That's right. But I'm just asking from a corporate or a commercial perspective, does the uncertainty of the New Zealand political scene act as a disincentive for overseas investment in this country, Craig?
Yes. You will have heard in the announcements around energy, the Minister of Finance specifically talking about sovereign risk, and that is the premium that overseas investors place on New Zealand because of its history of changing or swinging with each election cycle. So it's very hard to attract, for example, overseas miners to New Zealand without contractual certainty. They're at the whim of the political parliamentarians. So it is an issue. We don't have a very strong pro-global investment U-sharp into New Zealand. We tend to be a bit xenophobic than others, even though much of our modern history has been built on introduction of foreign capital and foreign ideas to build New Zealand. So it's an odd situation that doesn't help the economic growth and prosperity of our country.
No, particularly when you've got somebody who may play quite a prominent role suggesting that they can retrospectively invalidate consents that are given, I guess. But and that's where the National and Labour parties, those two centre and larger blocks of people, come into play. I guess the question I'd have of you, and I guess I can anticipate the answer, is they need to be pretty strong on this issue if overseas investment's going to flow into this country as two parties, don't they?
Well, they do. I mean, in my view, there's not a shortage of global capital, but they've got choices about where they want to go. And if New Zealand is not attractive from a risk premium sense, they'll take better risk-adjusted returns elsewhere. So I'm sure there's plenty of profitable projects here and opportunities, but if you just confine yourself to domestic capital markets, you're going to be constrained by way of lots of opportunities. So how do we encourage people to come here? Well, if you've got sovereign risk, you're going to have to do something different, like provide contractual certainty, which is a contract from the Crown to the entity in law, which can't be contestable by turning over legislation in Parliament. Well, if they did that, it would create a bigger mess than we've got at the moment.
Listen, just before I carry on to something else, if I don't ask you now, I won't ask you, I'll forget. Mount Cook, you're a mountain climber. Have you ever climbed it?
Yes, I've had two goes at it. First, this is going up the Hooker Valley, and then the traverse of the top, and then down the other side to Tasman Hut. The first occasion got to the transition from the Hooker Glacier onto the mountain, stayed in the hut, and the wind was just awful conditions. So I said, let's just back off and come back another day. The mountain will always be there, right? It'll always be there, but sometimes you don't come back. So packed up, went home, and then came back and did it the next year and had a fabulous climb over the top, and camped out in a crevasse on the top peak, then ran down the Linda Glacier underneath the gun barrels to Tasman Saddle Hut. Fabulous evening where you watch, you watch the moon and the rotation of the Earth, and you can see both coasts. I do remember climbing out on Sheila Face, which is the west-facing part of the climb over the peaks, and you can imagine this in your mind. At all times, you need 3 points of contact. So you've got two ice axes and you've got your crampons on, and you're moving one limb at a time. And at one point, I only had two pieces of contact, an ice axe and a crampon, which was incorrect style. But looking down the Sheila Face, it's quite intimidating to say, that's a long way down. You're roped up in pairs to make sure that one fell down one side, the other guy would jump over the other, and we'd both be in balance and not dead. But the report that's come out from this particular unfortunate incident, it's just not clear where they fell and why they fell. The story keeps to come out, but it's just a tragedy, and particularly from what seems to be a late night climb, and that tends to be when conditions are very good, snows and the ice is firm, it's not slushy, etc. So I don't know the circumstances yet, but amazing climb. It's just there's one other interesting stat about Aorangi Mount Cook, and it's only roughly 12,000 feet, which in European terms is not very high. But what Europeans and North Americans and people that aren't Kiwis don't understand is you start at 1,000 feet, so it's actually an 11,000 foot climb, and that's a very big climb in any continent's terms. So you can think of other climbs in Europe that are taller at a finishing point, but they start much higher. So because we're a maritime climate and the weather changes so quickly, you've got to get up and out quickly before those little clouds start rolling in from the west coast, which is a harbinger of wind and weather condition change.
Oh, it's fascinating. So I start from 1,000 feet. I don't have a base camp at 6,000 or 7,000. Is that what you're saying to me?
Well, no, you start at 1,000. There's an intermediate hut. I did the hook side, so there's an intermediate hut. I can't remember what height it is. It might be 3,000 or 4,000. Don't quote me on that. And then you continue up. My point is, if you were to do the climb in one day,
right?
You are starting at 1,000 and going through the Grand Traverse and out the other side to Tasman. It's a long climb.
Approximately 80 deaths have occurred specifically on the slopes of Aorangi Mount Cook and the peak.
Yep.
It's New Zealand's deadliest mountain. Was it
Yep.
your experience that there was an element of risk that you could be killed by? You could be killed climbing it, Craig?
Well, it's just judgment. Things like when you get to the top, you're only halfway. You've got to get down again. It's going past places where others have endured tough times, like Middle Peak Hotel. You might recall the climbers that were stuck in there for several days in a snowstorm, and they survived, but they lost some of their lower limbs. So you go through all those tragedies, but the key thing is the time of year you climb. So generally February through to June, July, when that's snow conditions are better. Late at night or early in the morning, it's having equipment that is available for you to use if things turn foul, and being courageous to say, look, I'm sorry, it's just not our day, turn back. Not enough climbers necessarily understand the length of the climb, the maritime climate, and having the courage to say, no, turn back, come back and do it another time.
Yeah, and I guess if you're coming from overseas,
I didn't feel threatened by it, or I just had a fantastic traverse and admired fell in love with the scenery, the kind of enjoyment of the whole thing with three other people. It was just a marvelous experience. So it can be energizing, of course. I didn't feel fearful at all. Just got to pay strong attention to your style as you clack across the top.
Okay, cool. Listen, and back to Reality Land. Well, no, that is Reality Land, but in fact, you probably can't get more real than that, just quietly. The other issue that happened yesterday was the OCR dropping, I think, 25 or 0.25% or whatever it is. I think they voted by 5-1, the Reserve Bank Board, to do so. We're back to mortgage rates of under 5%, I think. Inevitable? Is there anything more? Is this it? Is this where we stay? Your thoughts, Craig?
Yeah, pretty well flagged. As always, it's the tone around the change. So we've gone from 2.5 to 2.25% OCR. The more recent peak was 5.5 a couple of years ago, so it's come down a long way. The important thing is the outlook from here, and the RBNZ has got a terminal OCR disclosed of just over 2.2%, which pretty much tells you that this is it. There's no more easings from here. And I think the governor, I haven't checked the speech, but the governor's sort of saying it's all boring from here and there'll be no change in 2026. The important thing for you and your listeners to note is that there was some expectation of, a proportion of market participants were expecting another drop, or signal that there would be open to another drop in a more biased way. That did not come through. So in fact, 1 and 2 year interest rates actually rose because that expectation was not delivered. So it looks like markets are now pricing in the fact that this is the bottom, and the next stage is back up again. So if mortgage rates are hinged off those 1 or 2 year wholesale rates, mortgage rates, very difficult for them to come down from here unless banks want to eat into their margins.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So you think that will, those conditions, another 12 to 24 months, Craig, of roughly...
It's the RBNZ word, so no change in 2026. The inflation outlook is balanced, even though it's at 3% at the moment. It is going to come down. So they're kind of on hold, and they've always got the right to change their minds, but the signal to the marketplace is that we're on hold from here, and depending how growth emerges next year, it may well be we start with interest rates rising again, and including mortgages. So we are at the bottom in terms of interest rates, seems to me.
The cost of living is the number one key concern for Kiwis and dealing with uncertain economic conditions. You've talked about green shoots before, so's the government, but the thing that will save this government and give it a second term in office will be a discernible shift or improvement in economic conditions over the next 6 months, you would think, Craig, rather than the next 12. Can they reasonably expect that?
Yeah, I think so. The last GDP number was quite a large negative, minus 0.9 for the June quarter. I think that'll be an aberration. I was in your neck of the woods over the weekend in Queenstown, and I was gobsmacked around the number of foreign tourists in Queenstown. A discernible change from even as recently as a year ago, and most of them were European, Australians, and North Americans. Quite a big shift. So, I've said before, the regional outlook is pretty strong south of the Waitaki, Waikato, other parts of New Zealand that are exposed to dairy and beef and tourism. So, no, I think it's definitely changed, and it'll flow through to business confidence. And if we can get stability of interest rates for a period of time, we sort out the RMA kind of uncertainty and overseas investment, business confidence will translate into investment activity. It's just that a lot of households, you and I won't notice that necessarily, but it's occurring at a business level. And you won't see unemployment come down very quickly anytime soon. But you'll see profitability changes going on, and the share market's obviously higher than it was in April with Liberation Day. So, it'll be not a two-stage recovery, but a recovery that's unbalanced in the sense of it all going to the productive sector. It's going into exporters. It's going into businesses, not necessarily into households.
Finally, Craig, the other thing that struck me about yesterday's announcement, of course, is that I think this was the first, or might be the second, but announcement by the new Reserve Bank of New Zealand governor. I think our first female governor, but also from overseas as well, with international banking experience, obviously. Dr. Anna Bremen. How do you think she performed? How's she going so far? Too early to tell.
Well, the current governor, Christian Hawkesby, finishes this month.
Oh, that's right. She doesn't start until... Yeah, that's right. She won't start until December the 1st, yeah. Sorry.
That's it. So
Yeah.
don't know, but as always, high expectations. She comes from the Swedish central bank called the Riksbank, and is clearly looking to have a CEO or governor role at a central bank, and looking forward to meeting her at some point, and wishing her all the very best for her new role.
Why was she appointed and not someone in New Zealand?
We'll have to ask the Reserve Bank board that question. Of course, they will tell you, of course. But they would have looked at all the candidates, including the acting governor, Christian, looked at their capabilities and what they need for the job, and made the decision that Dr. Brennan was the person for the job. So,
well, that's I mean, that's the point you've got there. That's the point that I was heading for, is that they obviously feel that she's got particular skills that a New Zealand candidate doesn't have, and I was wondering where you think from her appointment that deficiency was.
Yeah, so what are the priorities for a board when they're looking at selecting the CEO? It goes to, where is the strategic focus of the board going to be? In the RBNZ's case, it's public knowledge they're setting up a new prudential oversight committee, a new committee of the board to particularly focus on the prudential regulation of the banking sector, in addition to their more clearly and obvious and well-known monetary policy function. That may well be a reason that they want someone with prudential supervision expertise. As I said, I don't know, but it absolutely depends on the strategic priorities of the board.
Well, do we know what those strategic priorities are?
Well, they get agreed by way of letters, don't they, between the finance minister and the central bank. So, how do you weigh up particular candidates' qualifications and experience to deliver on those? Do they present well on the day? Can they point to examples where the board hasn't thought of issues that they've thought of? I have no idea what went on, but I'm sure they've done their best to weigh up all the possibilities and think this is the best candidate going forward.
Well, yeah, well, you pick your money and you take your best. So, Craig, thanks very much for joining us, mate. Can I say, it was always nice to talk to you about economic matters, but it was interesting getting your experience on Mount Cook. Which is the most difficult and dangerous peak you ever climbed, by the way, in your mountaineering career?
Well, the toughest experience was our expedition to Pakistan to climb Gasherbrum 2, which is one of the 14 8,000 metre peaks in the world. We had a party of 12 or so Kiwis and an Aussie, and we walked up the Baltoro Glacier for, 10 days. That's a long trek to get to base camp behind K2, behind Concordia, and we had 3 months overall for the whole expedition. We were there with a Pakistani Army climbing team and a British climbing team in the same sort of area, all doing the same mountain from different approaches. I went up the Reinhold-Messner route. It's more of a direct route and sort of a attempt to flash climb it and get back down again. Got to about 7,400 metres and got stuck in a storm in a single skin tent, which was pretty unpleasant, so backed off. And my colleagues took the more traditional route from the glacier and went up with the Pakistani Army climbing team at the same time. My two guys, I was leading the expedition, my two guys decided to back off because of snow conditions were deteriorating. The Pakistani Army guys stayed on. And I was on the radio sked the next morning talking with the Pakistani Army people down below at base camp. And one of the four in that party on that face had pulmonary edema, which is, water on the lungs. They had to come down. So they were taking the tent down, and then there was silence on the sked on the radio, and they were avalanched off. And all four of them died, so we had to pick up the pieces and get the Pakistani Army helicopters up to take people out to Rawalpindi, Islamabad, and I packed up the expedition because morale had collapsed and conditions had deteriorated. Went out to Islamabad and Rawalpindi and spoke to the brothers and mothers and fathers of the men that had died, which was pretty sobering. So that was the most difficult climb.
I imagine so. Thank you for sharing that with us and for reminding us of the danger of it all. Look forward to catch up with you next week, mate.
Hey, mate. Thanks much. Thanks a lot. Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
Craig Stobo, Chairman of Local Government Funding Authority, Chairman of lots of stuff, but also mountain climber, mad mountain climber. He was the same when I was at Varsity with him. He started his career, but that's a sobering way to end.